This is Naked by the Future Farm, where entrepreneurship is stripped to its vulnerable core. Brought to you by Vladi and Nektarios Lolios. And remember to subscribe, follow, and rate Naked to help us share it with the world. Hey, Betty. Hey, Nektarios.
Hi, Vladi.
We're in the same part of the world, which feels nice and weird at the same time. It doesn't happen.
Rare.
It's rare. That's the right word. So yeah, London it is. I was just having this walk prior this recording, re-listening to Selma, and it was lovely. It put me into a good space mentally, and I was thinking like, oh, all of those people speaking about small habits, and I was like, okay, this is it. It feels good. So now that's a little bit of my glimpse into my day. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I don't remember if on the last extra episode I mentioned my yoga practice. I don't think I did, but now I've been doing yoga every morning from 7:30 till 8:30. I've been doing this now. This is week 3. It's a Thursday. So about 14 of them. And it's always a mix of breathing, a lot of focus on breathing, some positions, some flow, but also some meditation, relaxation. And it's really eye-opening. I'm trying to do the same thing with the journaling, where I just show up, even if I don't feel like it, I'll just make an effort. And some days are just a bit more rusty and a bit more hard. And some days I just...
sounds like a lot, actually.
It is a lot.
Like, wow. I usually do there are those bits like 15, 20 minutes, and it sort of feels the right time for me. But 1 hour is respect.
But it's also because the nice thing is I don't have to control anything. I just do what I'm told. And I mean, and there's a lot of variety, which is also good. But it's interesting just that how many different ways there are to breathe and the effect it has on your body. So I started this because I had this curiosity about breath work, and I tried a couple of different ways to do this. And I really feel the benefit of it. To the point, talking about small habits, I've noticed now where when I feel tense in my body during the day because I sit all day and doing Zoom stuff, I can control the relaxation of my body to some extent just by sending breath into parts of my body.
You are smiling, but to be honest, to bring this on a sort of fact note, what I'm trying to say is that I visited my doctor, generalist, last week in Slovakia, where I was there. And I have those digestive problems since. I can't even remember. And we were trying to sort of find the causes for it. And she done like a bunch of, tests with me and everything. And one of the things she landed on was, she was saying, you need to learn breathing techniques. She was saying, and she was literally showing me like how my breath, compresses the muscles around my stomach and everything. And then it has, other sort of impacts. And so, there, and we knew this, right? I mean, that there are many facts for this. So it's not just like a nice thing to do and sort of esoteric, wishy-washy something. So yeah, I totally hear you. It's a nice habit to build.
So that's what happened since the last episode.
Yeah. I mean, speaking about, we started with our own self-care. Today sort of, in some way, very exciting for myself because I have my first therapy session. I think I've shared with you and with the guys or with you folks listening is that I've been experimenting with this for some time now. And Nektarios, because you also gave me some recommendations, right? And I never sort of was very hooked on like, okay, is it a coaching and therapy? I always sort of in a way like the mix where you have somebody like a partner who can use either or depending on the need. And one of the things I was sharing with my friend is that it does take a time to really find somebody where you feel the chemistry. And that was exactly my case. I mean, it's been a few years that I've been testing and trialing and, letting go just because I didn't feel that this is the right fit for me. And funnily enough, our podcast guest, I think the first episode from the series, James Rutledge, if I said his surname correctly, but James, our friend, so he talked about his own therapist / coach, Sarah, and he was kind enough to introduce me because I was intrigued. Had a first chat and in a way loved it. So I'm speaking to her today. We're really excited about it. I hope I'll have a chance to share with you guys how it's going in the next few episodes, if we have any, because I think we're coming sort of to slowly we have a few more. Okay. And the Nektarios is showing he's like, we have 3 more to go. So so I'll keep you posted how this is going, but just want to flag that it does take time to find the right fit, and just, go for it if you have a chance, and, prioritize it. Even I was just thinking about the finances. I mean, is it cheap? No. But, is it an investment I want to do for myself? Yes. I made that sort of conscious choice internally. So yeah, that's today.
I hope it goes well.
Thank you.
It's dating, isn't it? You have to just go through it until you find somebody that feels nice, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's a good bridge to our guest today. Because Selma talks about how therapy has helped her.
Yeah. So what stood out for you? Because as I was re-listening to the episode, I sort of felt like part of me felt like I was maybe a little bit dominating the conversation. And then I was thinking, I had you in my mind, and I was like, I wonder how Nektarios felt about the whole thing, and not me dominating, but the theme, and, how could you relate to the whole conversation?
Well, I am a man and I'm not a parent. So there are 2 elements that kept me from directly relating to some of the things. But I can understand depression, and I can understand being exposed to it and not recognizing it, not acknowledging it. So, no, I find the conversation very engaging. And I'm always mindful, and we had this also with other female guests, where the subject was about the role of a woman and the experience of a woman. Of course, I can't speak for that, and I wouldn't want to, right? Unless invited. But no, for me, the key thing is that I didn't realize when we recorded the episode, when we were going through the edits, that one of the big frustrations that Selma had was baby blues. The fact that there's a word for it that takes away all the pain and all the negativity out of it and makes it light and passing. And it didn't stay with me during the conversation, but afterwards I thought, actually, we as a society have created something to take away the agency from people by saying, no, it's just something, it's okay. We've got a cute word for it, so therefore it'll be fine. And completely taken away agency, completely taken away the power to deal with it. It takes somebody to be strong enough to say, no, this is not just a fleeting, everybody goes through this, in a couple of weeks it'll be over. It affects my life majorly, and I need to address this. So kudos to Selma, right?
Yeah, I was thinking while she was talking about baby blues, I actually thought about founder's blues, because it reminded me, it was the sort of really in the first few days or early stage when I was sort of exposed to the problem. And then you go and search on Google, and I found those articles that were saying founders blues. And frankly, at that point, I guess I didn't feel like it was taking away. Like I could feel the heaviness around the blues. I think being non-native, it also, you just go and Google, like, okay, what does that mean? Right. And you find all of this, it means the downhill and being, in the dip and everything. So I never really had that relationship or that understanding. So hearing it from somebody like Selma saying, you know what, in this context, it is actually harmful, and that's how I feel, I think was, as you said, in some way, eyes opening, that she made that, call out. there was a lot of things, and thanks for sharing, like, how you sort of relate to this. And I personally found number of things as similar to you as a non-parent. In some way, this was for me a big learning experience as well. There was an element around the nurture, which was when she talks about the origins, right, and coming from Central Eastern Europe, and the sort of the role of an impact of culture. And she defined the two cultures: one, the one around yourself, the family and close environment, and then second, the entrepreneurial culture. But it made me reflect on really how much baggage very often do we carry with ourselves from those early days, right? So that was sort of a big one for me, because that stigma is really true. I remember in some way that it just felt in some way embarrassing to, embarrassing to put the emotions out there and to go into a conversation. Even if you put the emotion out, I think all of us sort of very quickly tried to find escape. And so again, I could, find a lot of relation to what she was saying in terms of the operational mindset. So yeah, that was a big one.
It's interesting that you mentioned the cultural element, because I grew up in a Greek home, right? And my mother was diagnosed with depression when she was going through menopause, and her menopause started really early. So she was 39. So there was a combination of things that triggered off this really bad depression to the point where she was hospitalized at some point.
Okay.
The interesting thing for me was now listening to Selma and clearly noticing that there's a propensity for depression on my mom's side of the family. I was wondering if my mother, who had 3 kids, went through something like postpartum depression herself. But of course, in a Greek family where it was expected of the woman to be bearing children, it was expecting for the woman to perform, to show up, to be operational. How much of this she actually experienced herself and couldn't articulate this because there was no permission to talk about it. It was baby blues. It's going to go away. It happens to women, right? It's sort of related also to people making jokes about women having fluctuations in their behavior based on their cycle and all that, right? So there's a cultural construct around it, and there's a sexist construct around this, and it's all kind of blends beautifully in inverted commas into one big mess of not allowing people to voice what they're experiencing, and when they do, not taking it seriously.
Yeah, feeling safe, right? The piece where she was saying that, it's a failure of the sort of healthcare system, where you get all the advice around how to, about nutrition and how to take care of your baby and all of it. But the big part about you is missing. Whilst I was listening to it, in parallel, there was this film in my mind, the story that it somehow sounds like we are hearing this about the business building experience. Is like, you get all the advice about how to build a business, right? But nearly nothing around like, how do you take care of yourself? And you're at the core of it. So in some way, those parallels, and I know that in Selma, it all sort of integrated together, which was just another layer of complexity, really. I found those, commonalities there. This piece around, sorry. No, go.
You go.
I think this is our unique pattern. Go. Yeah. Sorry. I had this question, actually, when I asked her at the end about if she would have done something differently in terms of sharing the experience with the team. And it kept me thinking, because part of her answer, Selma's answer, was still, maybe with 1 or 2 people, because you are in a fragile state. And I was thinking about this because I felt that actually personally, I find myself on I would say a little bit more of a different pole, where I feel like leading with the vulnerability, regardless of the stage of the business, and sharing with the sort of wider team where you are can have a lot of benefit. She made me think, and I was wondering what you think about this, like where you find yourself in this.
Oh, I mean, people who know me know that I can't even pretend. And I definitely don't want to. But I've learned to accept that people have their own way of operating. And I'm pretty sure that for Selma to share with us that she wouldn't have shared this in the first business, and now she might bring in one or two confidants, is her way of making progress, extending the vulnerability. But my personal approach to this is very different. Like, people instantly know if I'm having a good day or a bad day, and because I think it helps, it gives context. And I don't think it affects my credibility, because ultimately that's what people are worried about, right? Or the trust that people have in me. But I'm also prepared to take the risk that somebody might have a problem with that. And it's probably how delicate or how exposed you feel on losing credibility or losing trust or creating more problems by being vulnerable, by being vocal about what's happening. What about you? I mean, we had this conversation about vulnerability. We get excited by people who go completely, but there is, sorry, no, shouldn't be saying that.
I was just thinking, like, if sometimes, I don't remember when I was leading one of the sessions, and actually, I think it was actually called Founders Blues. It was with one of the accelerators, and there was a sort of experienced founder, and he came in, and he was talking about, but you know what, sometimes we overdo it. Sometimes it feels like if you don't have a mental health challenge, that you sort of feel left out. He was sort of talking about the other side of it, that, you know, having that experience and being vocal about it, it feels like the new black. And in some way I found like it was interesting that he shared that feedback, and it was a subjective view. At the same time, I felt like it could be harmful for a lot of people who actually were starting to feeling the safe space, and they wanted to be vocal about it and share as a part of the healing. And so I'm certainly more on the side of seeing the positive effects and impacts on others, where you, particularly when it's a leader, when they sort of become more human and say, like, hey, I'm struggling with this is what I'm dealing with it, I might need your support, I might not be here, or different ways. I hear you on what you said about Selma sort of, I guess, trying to know herself, right? So I guess it comes from that place. It's just understanding what feels okay and for us individually, and how ready we are. But it was something I wanted to raise in this conversation, because I felt like it left a question mark with me after that conversation.
I think it's a really interesting point for a multitude of reasons. Selma talks at some point about, well, if you break your leg, there's support, right? And if you break your leg, people see it. So there's no point to discuss it. People just acknowledge something's different, right? And you have to talk about these things if they're not visible. I think it's also important to talk about, to give people context on why you might be behaving differently, or why you might just not be your usual self. Our very first guest, Monique, she was so candid about how her experience of first, when she was finding it really difficult to deal with everything, not talking to anybody about this. And then after having gone a sort of transformation experience with a coach and counselor, she then started sharing with her team, which gave the team license to also be able to say, you know what, I'm having a bad day today, and that's okay too. I mean, people do have mental health days as an excuse as a reason, not excuse, not to come to work, right? It's not like, oh, I don't have to pretend that I injured myself or I have a cold. I can comfortably say, I'm having a difficult day today, I'm not going to come to work. Yeah. And that's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was actually thinking that that's sort of the new way forward, you know. Hopefully, it's not a future, it's a presence for in some places already. Sort of, I overall, after the conversation, I felt like how important to talk about this. The amount of selves meaning by layers of
Mm.
identity that are also represented in each of us individually. I think that was one of the things that stayed with me. And also how much we don't know what the other person is going through related to that identity, right? So I think I just felt like, wow, it was really important to have her. And I remember a number of my actually close friends who are in a similar age, like sort of mid 30s, and they're actually becoming more vocal exactly about this postpartum depression. And they're also entrepreneurs. And this is in Slovakia. And I have seen the wave of reactions that it had created. They were both positive and negative. Majority was really positive, and it sort of allowed a lot of other people to talk about their own experience. So I just felt that this was really valuable and important, and in some way it encouraged me on a personal level to speak up, just like kind of like, let's keep going. There's a lot of value in this.
When Selma was talking about the different selves, I thought that was really interesting, because one of the things we'd like to bring things back to is identity, right? And when you think about that, you as a woman have already got something more to prove than a man, and then as a mother, and then as a business person, all that. So there's layer upon layer of, let's call them obstacles, right? And it was also quite surprising to me that it was a husband who sat her down and said, something's not right, right? So it's also interesting, because sometimes it's also easy to stigmatize men for not doing enough or for ignoring the problem. Let's also acknowledge that this is a husband who saw his wife struggling, and actually gave her the nudge that she needed to maybe also just, and this is interpreting, but also give him permission to be vulnerable and say, you know what, you're actually struggling with something that you don't want to admit. Why don't we just look at this and find a way to help, right?
No, I felt like if you write a story, this is exactly how I would write the story, just to showcase a role modeling behavior. And it was very much a reality. It made me think about the significant others that we live with. If we have people, partners around ourselves, like as entrepreneurs, I know this is also quite an important topic for us at Future Farm. I think we still have a way to go to unpack it, like, how the partners can, and what are sort of the ways for them to support the entrepreneur on the roller coaster. But at the same time, this is a little bit less related, but I just want to shout it out there, is that I think there is an element around, if you are a partner of an entrepreneur who goes through such, ups and downs, how do you actually support yourself? What sort of your own system to deal with this? So not to only concentrate everything on that entrepreneur, but I think this is a very rich topic, and also very little talked about in terms of the dynamics.
My husband has learned to look at me and go, do you want to talk about it? And sometimes he knows that I don't think he actually cares. I think he just knows that this is the button that I need to just talk about it. And because it's more about me just getting stuff out rather than having somebody actively listening. And it's funny because sometimes it's so transparent, but it still works. And that's the whole point, right? It's like there's a bit of a... But we had to learn this, because it's naturally not, it wasn't like this when we first met, right?
I think it anyhow comes back to, it's to knowing yourself individually, and then blending that together, right? It's like, okay, how those two identities, I feel like more I know myself, and this is probably like no eye opener, but it's like more I know myself, it's just more mature do I stand up in front of my partner. It's like, and I'm able to call out on my needs and my moods and what I'm going through. And it's not easy journey. I mean, I'll be working on it today in the afternoon. So Cool.
Well, I'm really glad we had Selma as a guest.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about our next one.
Have a good day, Nektarios.
You too. Thank you. Take care, Vladi. You've been listening to Naked by The Future Farm, where entrepreneurship is stripped to its vulnerable core. To learn more about our work, sign up to our newsletter or visit thefuturefarm.co, where you can also apply to be a Naked guest. Naked is produced by Dan Turgel and edited by Catherine Dworke. And remember, subscribe, follow, and rate Naked to help share it with the world.